overwhelming number of people register over the weekend, which is great. So I'm very excited to see so many people here this evening. Just to do some orienteering to the control panel here, you should all have a gray rectangle to the right, probably, of your screen. It might be on the left, but most likely it's on the right. And it should have a little red arrow. It should have a green microphone that's probably muted off because I have everyone on mute to avoid any feedback. And also you should have an area where you have audio, perhaps, if you're having difficulty with that. Sometimes it's either switching it to the telephone or switching it to mic and speakers on your computer, but it seems like most people are on okay. And then you should have a chat feature at the bottom. It should be a little headline. You can click on it and it opens up a chat box. So that's where, if you have questions, you feel free to chat in your questions. Again, it is only going to us as the organizers, so you can be comfortable that no one else sees your chat. And I think without holding up any further, if you ladies would like to get started, that would be great.
Thank you, Ilya. So I think everyone can hear me. If not, just let Ilya know over the chat that you can't or you're having some technical difficulty, and we can troubleshoot that for you. I'm Eva Mendes. I lead the spouse and partners and the couple support groups here at AANE. Since 2009, I have worked almost exclusively with adults with Asperger's and with couples where one or both partners identify as having Asperger's. I'll be speaking for the second half of this presentation. There'll be plenty of time for questions at the end, and we encourage you to send them in to Ilya via chat, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can towards the end. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Grace Myhill, and I've been the coordinator for Spouses and Partner Services at AANE since 2005. Initially, I co-led a group for adults with Asperger's, and it is there that I began to learn about Asperger's from the experts, the adults with Asperger's. Shortly after that, AANE's phone was ringing off the hook with spouses asking what services were there for them. At this point, I began to co-lead spouse groups, and as soon as one group formed, there were new spouses on a waiting list for the next one. Eva and I now lead multiple spouse groups a year. A few years ago, AANE formed an online Google discussion group for spouses, which I moderate. AANE also pioneered the first group anywhere for neurodiverse couples to participate together in a support group, and that group continues to run a few times a year with Eva or myself co-leading. I have a private psychotherapy practice as well, in which I see adults with Asperger's or spouses of someone with Asperger's, or both members of the couple. Regardless of the venue, most of my work is about helping adults with Asperger's or their spouses to understand their partners without judgment or criticism, and to apply an Asperger's lens to their relationships. This approach helps to minimize conflict and hurt feelings, but even more than that, it gets to the root causes of many of the couple's issues. And as Eva will discuss later this evening, the Asperger's framework offers strategies and hope. Many people in long-term relationships with individuals with Asperger's wonder how they ended up with their partners. I am going to start my talk tonight by sharing how one such relationship began over 30 years ago. This is the courtship story of Sally and Joe, as first seen through Sally's lens. The story begins like this. One day, a close neighbor of mine died. That was the day that Joe called out of the blue and asked me out on our first date. That very evening, a cold winter night in December, we went ice skating at an indoor-outdoor rink near Boston. I remember telling Joe about my neighbor's death. I talked about life and its meaning to me. Joe seemed to understand. We spent much of that winter ice skating together. Joe seemed to take pleasure in helping me tighten my laces and care for my skates. I liked this attention. Joe was an ideal suitor, holding the same job for more than 10 years, maintaining a decent savings account. Joe had 2 master's degrees. He loved to read and would read poetry to me. Joe drank tea and seemed polite, well-educated, and highly civilized. I was raised in a working-class family, and people behaved quite differently. They certainly did not read poetry and drink tea. Joe always bought me beautiful bouquets of flowers and brought expensive bottles of wine to my apartment. As winter turned to spring, we began to ride bikes together. Later in spring, we went sailing together. I loved the outdoor activities. We had fun together. I didn't realize just how much Joe needed to be in control. He planned all of our activities, and he even chose the bike routes. But he treated me wonderfully. One day, Joe invited me over to his 2-bedroom apartment in Boston. It was an absolute mess. I had never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe anyone would invite someone to their home without cleaning it up. Joe was totally unaware of my astonishment. When serving dinner, he just pushed the clutter aside. The bed was covered with books and magazines, and the apartment had cockroaches. Needless to say, we didn't spend much time there. I loved Joe, and I dismissed the mess. It never dawned on me that Joe would be deeply committed to the clutter. We agreed to find a new apartment together. By getting Joe to agree to move, I mistakenly thought I had solved the clutter problem. Joe proposed on Valentine's Day in a wonderful restaurant in the North End. We planned a June wedding so that we would be married before sailing season. I knowingly did this because I wanted Joe to be happy, and I wanted to be his wife before summer. Our life seemed ideal. I thought I had married someone who would continue to love me, take care of me, spend time with me, and enrich my life with fun, meaningful experiences. We planned to spend that summer on the Cape. I was thrilled. Joe went alone to find a summer cottage to rent. My only request was that I would have a beach to enjoy while Joe sailed. Joe came back thrilled about finding just such a cottage. When we moved in, I asked to see the beach. Joe took me to a tiny, muddy boat launch area on a saltwater river and called it a beach. I was dumbfounded and disappointed. Joe did not pick up on my total shock and bewilderment. I was newly married and didn't make too much of a fuss about it. Joe went sailing Saturdays and Sundays with Fortune 500 company friends and acquaintances and left me with a mud hole at the cottage. I willingly packed lunches for them. I spent the entire summer looking for a nearby beach to enjoy. I never found one. Joe never realized how disappointed I was, nor once thought of my needs that summer. I vividly remember that Saturday morning when I was pushed away in bed, rejected for the first time. Joe got up, went sailing, and never looked back. Our marriage was never the same again. I was relegated to the back burner of Joe's life. I no longer felt like his priority. Now let's look at Sally and Joe's courtship story through an Asperger's lens. Sally and Joe's relationship began by sharing common interests and mutually enjoyable activities. Joe's help and attention to details felt like caring to Sally. Sally enjoyed being the focus of an intelligent suitor. Sally liked that Joe was different from other people. Joe's courtship behaviors felt loving to Sally. Sally enjoyed sharing in Joe's special interests and in his activities. These shared activities were fun for both members of the couple. So what changed for Sally and Joe after marriage? Many individuals with Asperger's are calmed by structure, consistency, and routine, but to their partners, this can feel rigid, inflexible, or controlling. Many individuals with Asperger's are able to stay focused on something or someone only when their motivation is high. For many individuals with Asperger's, living alone in spacious quarters is much less stressful than cohabitation. Some individuals with Asperger's feel that their things are part of their history and therefore cannot be thrown away. They do not see their stuff as the mess that their partners see it as. Some individuals with Asperger's with special interests and collections relegate any available space to these prized possessions without the awareness of any impact on their partners. Some individuals with Asperger's leave their partners with no clear space of their own in their home. Some individuals with Asperger's engage in romantic behavior during the courtship period, but they do not think they need to continue after they are married. They may not have seen any models for prolonged romantic behavior in long-term relationships. Many individuals with Asperger's treat their special interest as their top priority. This can leave their partners feeling lonely and unappreciated. Many partners of individuals with Asperger's are eager to compromise to avoid conflict. But when the partner's needs are not met, they begin to feel neglected. These disappointments, which happen again and again, often turn to anger and resentment. Many individuals with Asperger's have difficulty reading faces and picking up on nonverbal cues, so they miss their partner's communication of their feelings. Many individuals with Asperger's have difficulty initiating chores and managing the tasks of their daily lives that require executive functioning. Their partners often take on many of these jobs in the relationship. Many individuals with Asperger's have difficulty putting themselves in someone else's shoes and do not meet their partner's needs, leaving their partners to try to find ways of meeting them on their own. As the anger and disappointment from the partner builds, often the individual with Asperger's will spend more and more time with a special interest. This can create further stress from which one or both partners may retreat. The result can be that the couple lives parallel lives with very little positive interaction or connection. Eva will now describe some useful strategies that many neurodiverse couples have found useful.
Hello again. In the second half of the presentation, I will be speaking about these strategies, and while we can't speak for every couple, most of the couples that we've worked with report that they've been useful. Diagnosis and evaluation. Diagnosis can be provided by a psychiatrist or a therapist specializing in Asperger's. This kind of a diagnosis can include a comprehensive life history questionnaire, either verbal or written, as well as a profile of Asperger's traits and the information provided by the NT or neurotypical partner. Diagnosis can also be done by doing a comprehensive battery of neuropsychological tests by a neuropsychologist. In addition to the individual psychological history, the battery of tests measure aspects of an individual's neurology like processing speed, working memory, perceptual reasoning, and IQ. Finding the appropriate clinician who can make an Asperger's diagnosis can be very challenging. The majority of clinicians, therapists, and doctors are not trained or experienced in seeing the more invisible representation of Asperger's in adults, especially adults that are considered high functioning, or in other words, are highly accomplished in their chosen fields, are married, and are strong contributors to society. It's very important to speak to a clinician who specializes in Asperger's in adults. Many in the clinical community still think of Asperger's as something that only includes children. Services for adults are rare. A specialist is usually someone who has received special training in Asperger's and has seen a wide variety of adults with Asperger's. A good way to find clinicians who can diagnose your partner or yourself is to call AANE and ask for names of diagnosing clinicians. Diagnosing Asperger's is complex and multidimensional. Having the NT spouse participate in the diagnostic process is crucial. Even the DSM-5 is now saying that diagnosis is most valid and reliable when based on multiple sources of information, including the clinician's observations, caregiver and childhood history, a self-report, life history, and screening for the various Asperger's traits. Asperger's traits are nuanced, and not everyone has the same traits with the same level of severity. It's important to note that even though Asperger's is a spectrum, it is not a linear spectrum. It's important instead to see it as a constellation of traits. These constellation of traits typically relate to cognition, executive function, sensory issues, relationship and social interactions, and behavior. While an official diagnosis of Asperger's isn't always necessary to view the marriage or relationship through an Asperger's lens, it is important that both partners accept that that is what is playing a role in their relational struggles. Once the relationship is seen from an Asperger's lens, the couple then can work together on solutions to work within this framework. A quick note about diagnosing and addressing comorbid or mental health issues in adults with Asperger's. Mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder or OCD, or attention deficit disorder or ADHD are common amongst adults with Asperger's. Treating these issues either with behavioral or medical interventions is important. Additionally, clinicians often diagnose the most immediate and overriding mental health concern, often missing the Asperger's traits in the same individual. Asperger's syndrome is now part of the autism spectrum in the new Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or DSM-5. This is a guide that clinicians use to determine diagnostic criteria. The new DSM-5 was released earlier this year in May. Individuals who received an Asperger's diagnosis in the past would now be given an autism spectrum diagnosis. Reading and watching movies and documentaries about Asperger's and relationships can also provide many couples with a lot of information and validation of their relationship experience. There are also several articles on Asperger's and relationships on the AANE website under the navigation tab, Articles and Resources. It is important to understand Asperger's as a neurological difference as opposed to a psychological problem. The individual with Asperger's thinks and behaves differently because their brain is wired differently. The NT, Asperger's neurological differences, can be pervasive and affect every aspect of the relationship and day-to-day functioning of the couple. Sensory issues. Understanding sensory issues in adults with Asperger's is important so that both partners in the relationship can problem solve as needed. Asperger's is characterized by the individual having sensory issues. Sensory issues mean that one or more of the individual's senses are hypersensitive or not sensitive enough. Sensory issues can cause troubles with sex, expressions of physical affection, going to certain places, and changes in the environment, amongst other areas. Problem-solving sensory issues can include using earplugs, polarized sunglasses, not wearing certain perfumes and colognes, being partial to certain types of clothing, using wire brushes to sensitize the skin to certain types of touch, showering before sex, etc. For many with Asperger's, emotions can be extreme and intense. In addition to emotions, many individuals with Asperger's also have trouble hearing their own volume and tone of voice. Learning skills to self-regulate and cope is important so that these emotions aren't constantly overflowing into the relationship and onto the NT partner. A relationship flooded with negative emotions creates volatile patterns of interaction, which can over time destabilize the marriage. Instead of downloading emotions onto the NT partner or other family members, it's important to learn the appropriate coping skills. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is based on the premise that an individual's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are inexorably linked. One's thoughts influences one's emotions and actions, and emotions can influence thoughts and behaviors as well. CBT can help an individual become more aware of and recognize negative patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Recognizing negative emotions and patterns of thinking can help people to better regulate themselves. CBT is the only therapy that has been clinically proven to help individuals with Asperger's. Mindfulness meditation can be useful to help both the partner with Asperger's as well as the NT partner slow down and think before reacting to a particular situation. Slowing down reaction time can lead an individual to really focus on their own actions and words and the impact they can have on those around them. Slowing down reaction time can be useful in reducing hurtful behaviors. Practices such as yoga have also proven to help individuals with Asperger's pay more attention to their body and its reaction to stressful situations. It is helpful to increase the mind-body connection for both the Asperger's as well as the NT partner. Using exercise to manage stress is another key coping strategy. Exercise helps maintain not only a healthy body, but a healthy mind as well. The research is overwhelming in proving the benefits of exercise for all people, Asperger's or non-Asperger's. For individuals with Asperger's, vigorous exercise can help make a huge difference in their ability to cope with and handle stress. Exercise also induces endorphins or happy chemicals in the brain. Exercise is very helpful in managing the symptoms of depression and anxiety in both the partners in the couple as well. For many with Asperger's, research has shown that low doses of certain types of psychotropic medication can help manage perseverative thinking, anger, and other negative feelings. Medication can help manage attentional deficit issues as well as depression and anxiety for many. The intensity of emotions, lack of motivation, and low energy that many adults with Asperger's feel can also be reduced or managed by medication. It is important, once again, to get a medication evaluation from a psychiatrist specializing in Asperger's, as the Asperger's neurology is different from the neurotypical. A comprehensive and detailed conversation with your provider is recommended. Changes in the environment can contribute to stress for the partner with Asperger's. So it's important to plan out, discuss, and problem solve social events and new situations. For example, if the couple is hosting a sit-down dinner with many guests, they might want to discuss breaks for the partner with Asperger's, an exit strategy if the situation feels too overwhelming, and role-playing for certain situations ahead of time can also help prepare the partner with Asperger's. Many adults with Asperger's also have a hard time with executive functioning, which makes organizing, planning, managing time and space difficult. Executive functioning can also mean that they might not recognize or identify the problem that needs solving and the subsequent problem solving strategies. Making step-by-step behavioral guides can really help support the partner with Asperger's in problem solving a particular issue. Utilizing calendars, to-do lists, and spreadsheets can also provide much structure for the couple and the marriage. Calendars can be utilized to plan and ritualize date nights, the frequency of sex, joint hobbies or activities, as well as family events and the celebration of milestones, birthdays, and anniversaries. Once the day-to-day tasks and duties get sorted out, both partners will begin to have a better sense of stability and peace of mind. Another strategy to cope with the executive functioning issues is to hire professional help. Professional help can range from house cleaning staff to babysitters to professional coaches and organizers, career counselors, accountants, and financial consultants. For the NT or non-Asperger's partner, meeting their emotional needs outside the marriage or relationship might be necessary. Too much time spent in the sole company of their partner with Asperger's can contribute to the NT partner feeling depressed or even having physical health issues. Nurturing friendships can be a source of great comfort and assurance. Friendships for the NT partner can also validate their neurotypical way of being and interacting. Many couples also say that their pets are a major part of their stress management strategy. Animals such as dogs, cats, and other household pets have been proven to reduce anxiety and soothe individuals with Asperger's. Pets can also provide companionship for both partners, NT and Asperger's. Support groups for the NT partner have also proven to be a helpful source of emotional support and validation. NT partners say that these groups help them feel less isolated. We have found that support groups for both partners, such as a couples support group, can also be useful to normalize Asperger's. Another important function of these support groups for both spouses is that of education and information gathering. The participants of these groups report that these groups help them to engage more wisely in their marriages. David Finch, the author of the Journal of Best Practices and a married adult with Asperger, said it best. A person married to someone with special needs also has special needs. Many NT spouses report that they rejuvenate themselves by going to beauty spas and other self-care retreats. In our work with spouses, it is a point that we stress repeatedly. For the partner with Asperger's, self-care is usually about finding time to be alone in order to recharge their energy. Alone time is not a luxury, but a necessity, and this can take many forms. For some, it can be the time that they spend bicycling to and from work. For others, it can be turning the lights off and just sitting by themselves in a quiet room. Or it can be playing their favorite piece of music, taking a long bath, a swim, or going for a hike in the woods. The special interests that brought a couple together during the courtship phase often take a backseat after the marriage. A way to bridge this gap is to schedule activities that the couple find fun and bonding. It's best if these activities get on the couple's calendar and become routine, so that both partners can come to anticipate and count on the scheduled time together. Working with a couples counselor can be very helpful, but working with a couples counselor who is a specialist in Asperger's is key. It is important that the couples counselor view the marriage or relationship through the Asperger's lens. Typical couples counseling strategies just don't work for couples where one or both have Asperger's, and couples report that working with someone who doesn't understand Asperger's can hurt rather than help the marriage. A couples counselor who understands the Asperger's neurology can serve as an interpreter and provide perspective to each partner about the other person's point of view. A couples counselor specializing in Asperger's can also provide Asperger-specific strategies and tools for communication. Communication. Being in a neurodiverse marriage or relationship means that both partners process information differently, and therefore misunderstandings over small things can become commonplace. For the partner with Asperger's, it's important to learn scripts, phrases, and words that help them to speak up for their own needs. An NT partner may be baffled at why their partner became angry when they made a new request of them. A way to problem solve this would be to prepare the partner with Asperger's ahead of time about the upcoming event so that they have plenty of time to anticipate and plan for the situation. Communication for the partner with Asperger's works best when it's clear, concise, concrete, or action-oriented, direct, and firm. Often the NT partner worries about appearing condescending to the spouse with Asperger's, but it's necessary to provide the partner with Asperger's with all the little details. It is important that the NT partner break down information into steps while making requests. Giving the partner with Asperger's too much information at once or new information can be overwhelming to process. Some couples find that using emails, phone calls, and texts to communicate is more effective than face-to-face interactions. In-person communication can leave both partners to read between the lines. Both partners might interpret tone of voice and other unintentional nonverbal cues. While the NT partner may feel that they're being clear, the partner with Asperger's might be confused and misunderstand the message. Email, text, and handwritten notes can sometimes leave less room for interpretation. Also, many people with Asperger's are visual processors, so seeing a request in writing can sink in better than just the spoken word. Using email, text, and handwritten notes can also allow the partner with Asperger's the extra time that they might need to process things. In the beginning, learning new and effective ways of communication for both partners can be exhausting, but if both are dedicated and don't give up, lasting change is possible. Even though it's a human tendency, it's important to avoid making assumptions, jumping to conclusions about one's partner's behavior. Instead, make it a habit to ask questions when upset and frustrated about your partner's behavior. Asking questions can slow down both partners and enable both to listen. Bringing curiosity versus judgment can create space for heart-to-heart dialogue. While the many traits that individuals with Asperger's have are similar and fit a very particular neurological and behavioral profile, the traits manifest differently in each individual. It is important to remember that every individual with Asperger's is unique, and just like neurotypicals have different personalities, preferences, and ways of being. The models of neurodiverse relationships are as unique as the individuals in it. Many couples choose to live separately, even though they continue to remain in an intimate relationship. Others spend their whole lives dedicated to social causes that bind them together, giving them a common life mission in the world. Although we cannot speak for every couple we worked with, the strategies mentioned in this presentation have proven to be and continue to be very effective for the majority of neurodiverse couples. It is also important to note that while we've tried to cover many key strategies and interventions in this presentation, there are many issues and solutions that we haven't touched upon due to time constraints. Hope and happiness. Is it possible? Yes. The success of each marriage and relationship depends on the continued hard work, growth, and development of each partner, as well as the unique circumstances of each couple, together with finding the right information and Asperger-specific help. That said, the couples we work with surprise us by their resilience and ability to overcome obstacles on a regular basis. The hard work, tenacity, and persistence of each couple we have worked with has been humbling and has sustained our own hope in the work that we do. Thank you all for your attention today. We can now begin the Q&A session.
Hello, this is Elia. I'm back. We do have a couple of questions. Just to clarify, we will be sending a copy of the slides at the conclusion, either later tonight or tomorrow, so you will get a copy of the slides. And let's see, are you ladies ready for some questions?
Yes.
Okay, and feel free to chat in questions as I'm reading others, so so that way we have a line here. So one question we have is, lack of emotion, or at least emotional expression, is a factor in our relationship, a 24-year marriage. Is this typical or perhaps a learned pattern of behavior? How can we learn to access emotions again?
Well, this is Grace. I'll start by answering that it's important to differentiate if the person isn't aware of their emotions or just can't communicate their emotions. In the first case, there's a term called alexithymia, which most people with Asperger's do not have, but many do. Not everyone with alexithymia. Not everyone with Asperger's has alexithymia, but everyone with alexithymia has Asperger's. Alexithymia means that you don't understand one's emotions, you can't identify your emotions, you don't know your emotions. And in this case, we recommend that you work with the person's thoughts. It's a close approximation. It's CBT is useful with that. If you work with what the person is thinking, then you get a little bit closer to what they're feeling. In the second case, where the person does know their emotions, but they can't express it, then we recommend trying to communicate in a different form. Eva mentioned emails or texts. We also recommend visuals like pictures or diagrams. We sometimes quantify emotions. We use a numeric scale, or we use a color coding. This is a red day. This is a blue day. When I put up a yellow card, it means I need a break. Things of this nature. So I hope that some of that is helpful, but the person who wrote this question, please feel free to follow up with another question if we didn't. Eva, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you said it all.
Okay, we do have another one. One is, what can you do if your AS partner doesn't want to be diagnosed because he would feel that he is the defective one, in quotes?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of stigma out there still, and that is part of our mission to, really see it as a neurological difference. Even, the word syndrome, it sort of feels like it's some kind of a disorder, and then the autism spectrum disorder. I mean, who wants to have that? So I think it is important to really phrase it as being a neurological difference rather than there's something wrong with the person. I would say, sow that seed and then nurture it. That's the metaphor I use with a lot of my spouses and couples. Um, and just kind of revisit it and say, well, what do you think? I found this article, and maybe over time, I mean, having maybe a long-term view. And I know sometimes spouses don't want to hear that because they've already been suffering so much and struggled. But I think sometimes there is that rigidity in some individuals with Asperger's where they don't want to do something new or look at something differently, especially not when you're going to drag them to a clinician or a therapist and say, yeah, you have something unusual or different about you.
I'll just add to that, it's important to understand who's going to know. If someone gets a diagnosis and it's just for the couple to be able to understand each other better, and it's not thrown in anyone's face as an insult, but it's really intended for a tool, that's one thing. To go outside the marriage and to start naming it to family and to friends, that's something that the couple should decide upon together. To go outside that circle even more to the work environment or the larger community, that is a different discussion to have, and there are reasons to have it and there are reasons not to. So I would say that before deciding whether to have a diagnosis, to be clear what the goal and what the use of the diagnosis would be. I also would just normalize that Asperger traits are traits that everybody has some of. There's probably about 100 traits. I think that's what Tony Atwood has said. And it's a question of how we deal with the traits that we have. And that's true of the neurotypical person as well as the Asperger person. So, just to keep in mind that we all have things that we're working on in improving ourselves, and that we tend to choose partners who have something that we are seeking to have more of ourselves. And if there's a way to acknowledge the strengths in each person and use the strengths as to benefit the couple as a whole, then that would be a very good goal to have.
Okay, I have another question here. What if he won't do outside work like landscaping or putting in back stairs and won't hire anyone? How does it get done? I can't do it myself.
That's a very common question, and I'm glad that one was brought up because often what happens for a person with Asperger's sometimes is that they can't get past a certain rigidity where they maybe can't spend money on something because they, in theory, they know that they could do it themselves. So in principle, it's hard for them to push through that to hire somebody, or they have trouble making a decision and they just keep putting it off and putting it off because it's an unpleasant activity, and other things take priority over that. However, that said, there are things that need to happen. And so some suggestions that spouses have brought to us are, giving some sort of deadline, just as a structure. Like, we need to decide by the end of the fall, and be very specific, by December 1st, we need to decide what we're going to do with the lawn or what we're going to do with, snow clearing. We have to decide that before winter sets in or something. Give some logic to the deadline. It's not an arbitrary deadline. It's related to the event somehow. And then recognize that the person with Asperger's may be having a difficult time making a decision. Offer to talk through what the obstacles are. Often when you start to really get curious about each other's thought processes, you learn something that you just never expected. So often what happens is a person with Asperger's will hit an obstacle and they won't know how to problem solve because that's part of executive function, and their brains just often don't go down a problem solving place. They don't tend to brainstorm. They don't tend to want to do rough drafts of things. They want to get everything perfectly, and the only way to do that is to process over and over and over again in their own heads. However, if they're doing something in their own head, they often are missing what their partner may be bringing in. For example, an aesthetic or an emotional component or some value that may be not logical but equally important. So if there's a way to have a conversation together about what's getting in the way of this decision, here are two choices. We hire somebody or you do it. Maybe there are other possibilities. Maybe you do a little bit of it and we hire someone to finish it. Or maybe, we get some of our friends and family to help do the thing, or whatever it is. So there may be more than two answers or two choices. And that, again, is hard for people with Asperger's to sometimes see. They tend to have more black and white thinking, more of the two choices, either this or that. And if a couple can sit down and have an open conversation about what's getting in the way of making the decision, as well as what each other's needs are, that would be a goal. Needs don't have to make sense to the other person, but they do need to be validated and acknowledged that they are equally important. It might not be logical, but a need that each person has is something that the other person can have respect for and understanding for.
Okay, we have another one, so we have them coming in, so I apologize, I have to scroll back. Do most AS resist trying therapy and medications to help with their symptoms/challenges? If so, why?
I wouldn't say that most people with Asperger's resist help in that way. Everybody is different. Sometimes they do have what I would call like mild paranoia. Maybe in general, professional help or clinicians, they just feel like that's not going to be useful. A lot of people who have that view tell me that they've actually had failures with prior therapists or clinicians in the past. So then they'll say, well, I just talked and talked and I never got any like solutions on what to do. So then they may have that happening, or it could be some cultural issue, or programming, family of origin. So I wouldn't say that everybody is resistant, but some are.
I just want to add that it's not Asperger's that people need the medication or the therapy for. It's the comorbid things that Eva mentioned that come with Asperger's. It's the symptoms of anxiety or depression or OCD or ADD. All of these things typically coexist in the person with Asperger's, and those are the types of things that therapies and medication can help with. So it's not that the person should go to, a therapist to get, treatment for their Asperger's. It's to get treatment for the things that are getting in their way of being happy and productive. And that's true for the NT partner as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that's why it's all the more important, if you have a partner that's resistant and say finally you get them in the door to see somebody who can make a diagnosis, or for couples counseling, I think you want to then make sure that this person really does know about Asperger's and has extensive experience, so that, then you don't go there and they're like, oh yes, you don't have it. Just like that, maybe just because somebody has a job and a marriage and makes eye contact, because we get a lot of those stories too, and then that can, set back a couple many times, and then you lose ground again, and then you have to start all over. So then taking him again to an Asperger specific clinician can be that much more work then. So I just wanted to make that point too.
And there has been research that shows that people with Asperger's have different responses to medication than people without. So a very small dose of some medication might take the edge off their anger or their negativity or their perseverative thinking. And I'm a big proponent of, if it works, then do it. If it doesn't work, then try something else. And it certainly seems that if a person is really struggling, then it does pay to try a couple of things and see if they can get some help.
Okay, another question. Is it important that the exercise component you mentioned is formal exercise, i.e. cardio, strength training, or just being active, gardening, etc.?
It's whatever helps them. I mean, for some people, we find that they report that really intense bouts of activity really can, that's how much it takes for them to reach like a tipping point to when they can just then relax, So for some people, it can be that way. For others, it can be just, gardening and puttering about and, going for, strolls and walks, in nature and stuff. So I think it's unique to that individual. A lot of people with Asperger's tend to have an aversion to exercise sometimes. We see a lot of that in younger children and stuff. But I would say, pushing through that and making it part of a routine, and then also making it sort of non-negotiable, like, Tuesday nights are yoga nights, or Fridays or Saturday mornings, or whatever it is, and then just putting it on the calendar. And unless something, urgent or an emergency comes up, you hold to that. So having it be on a regular basis, I think, is more important than what the activity is.
I just want to take this opportunity to point out that with every Asperger trait, we see 180-degree differences as well. So there are some people with Asperger's who, for example, run marathons or triathlons, and they exercise is a special interest, and they devote hours and hours of their day to exercise. And, again, that's probably great for their ability to decompress and to relax. They just have to check with their partner that they're not neglecting them.
Thank you for saying that.
Have another question. My NT partner has asked me to ask a question. I can't think of one because it takes me a long time to process these issues. I'm now anxious she'll be disappointed with me and we'll get into an argument. Is that common for AS individuals? Are there good strategies AS individuals can employ in these situations? So this is happening real time.
Okay, yes, this is very, very common. I would recommend that the person who asked this question, if there's anything that they heard tonight that is of interest, that they want to just take a few minutes, do some deep breathing, have a glass of ice water if you're able to get to it, just relax, and we still have a half an hour of presentation time left, which we hope will be to continue to feel these, answer these interesting questions. So give yourself some time, and it could be a very short question. It could be a question that, someone else might ask a question that may remind you of another question. So just try again in 15 or 20 minutes. Try to come up with another question. I would just say in general, yes, it's hard for people with Asperger's to think quickly on their feet, to come up with things quickly is hard for anybody, but then when the anxiety gets in the way, it's even harder. So first try to relax and get a handle on the anxiety, and then see if your mind allows you to think more clearly.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, also self-advocating for yourself when you can. Saying, yeah, it does take me, more time to process, just like you said in your question to us. That was great, acknowledging that. And that way, you can say, I'm still thinking. It might take me a few minutes or 10 minutes to process, or I may have to process after and sleep on it. And then also strategize, well, should you come up with a time tomorrow for an hour or half hour to talk about this presentation, maybe, so that both of you are not like, oh, we had that presentation and now what? And I'm just, and the NT's partner is feeling like I'm thinking about it and you're not, So I would say schedule some time to maybe talk about it at a later date. And I think saying that, it does take me longer to process. I think that's great.
Okay, we have more coming in, so I keep moving, scrolling through the questions. Okay, what suggestions do you have for an NT-AS couple who reside in a remote area without specialists in the area? We have sought several counselors, marriage as well as individual, but have not found anyone who can help.
Well, Eva and I are both doing video conferencing sessions or phone sessions with people in remote areas or without resources. So if that's of interest, feel free to email us after this presentation, and we'd be happy to explore the logistics of that with you.
Yeah, the other thing is, reading books and the resources that I mentioned. Also keep trying, seeing if there is a therapist who'll be willing to learn about Asperger's. Grace, you also have been recently providing coaching and supervision for therapists who work with individuals and couples with Asperger's. So maybe the therapist can actually consult with us. We'll be happy to do that. There's a lot of information on AANE's website. We do need to train more professionals in the field as well, and just keep looking. Don't give up. You just never know. and some people do travel to AANE for workshops or conferences. Sometimes even people come from long distances outside of the country, from out of state, to see Grace and I as well. Sometimes it's like a one-time consultation thing, and then we can follow up with video conferencing or the phone. And sometimes even one partner working with us, I think, can really make a difference for the relationship.
And one more thing to add, one thing that's very helpful for anybody is try to identify what is stressful in your environment. Eva touched on that with her part of the presentation too. Whatever anyone can do to decrease the stress for both members of the couple, that's going to help. And that's a lot of work. So even if you can just start to work on that amongst yourselves, identify what's stressful and try to decrease that. That would at least bode well while you're trying to find other supports. There also is an online group. I think I mentioned it's a discussion forum for the spouses, and anyone who's a member of AANE is welcome to be part of that.
Okay, another question. My husband was recently diagnosed. We've been married about 2 years, but there's already a lot of hurt and resentment in the marriage. What strategies do you suggest to get over some of the past pain so that I can stay focused on working in the present?
I would say learn as much as you can about Asperger's, and for both members of the couple, and really start to understand that certain things may not have been intentional. Understand that neurology is not a choice, and really try to put yourself in your partner's shoes. If there's something that you need to let go of some anger, it's okay to ask for that too. For example, some people need an apology or an acknowledgement of something that's happened in the past that was hurtful, and that can go a long way. If you see that your partner's trying, that can go a long way. If you see that your partner is vulnerable and lets their defenses down, that can go a long way. So, I guess it's a bit of an individual thing, but do whatever you can to communicate what you need to move past the anger, and then give your partner a chance to see if they can provide that for you.
Okay, another question. My husband goes to bed at 2 a.m. because he's so wired, anxious, and nervous. I call him starting at around 11 to make him aware of bedtime. Sorry, a question came in. Aware of bedtime, but he won't come to bed before 1 or 2. I go to bed by myself. Should I just adjust?
Well, it's very typical for people with Asperger's to stay up very late. My understanding of this is because the transitions are difficult. Transitions from awake to asleep, and then transitions from asleep to awake. So we often see people with Asperger's who have almost a reverse schedule, and it makes it hard to connect to the spouse. So in terms of what to do about this, if your partner is interested in trying to get to bed earlier, then there are things that you can do that will help. For example, closing screens, turning off screens an hour before bed, or not eating or drinking an hour before bed, or having a bedtime routine that is boring, frankly. Something, some music, some sleepy music, or some sleepy reading, things that are not gonna keep the person awake. So if your partner with Asperger's is interested in trying to go to bed earlier, there are some things that they can try. And of course, many people do take medication to help them to get to sleep as well. However, if your partner with Asperger's is staying awake late at night because they're seeking some alone time, then try to give them alone time during the day, or earlier in the evening so that they don't need to stay up all night to get that. The other thing is if going to bed alone isn't something that works for you, then some couples will actually get into bed together, and then one partner will fall asleep, the other one will then stay awake and either read in bed or listen to music or be on their computer or something in a way that doesn't disturb their partner, or will even leave and some will sleep in another room. But I would say try to separate out what the needs are. If you have a need to connect with your partner at the end of your day and they're willing to get into bed with you for a specified amount of time, and be clear on the goals of what that would be, and then they can go do what they do late at night, then that's one thing. I don't think you have to let go of all of your needs and all of your expectations. I think it's just important to adjust them based on what you learn about Asperger's and about your partner.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the some of the strategies that I talked about, like exercise and mindfulness and meditation and yoga, all of that I think can help. It regulates sleep, and this is a big issue in our community. So you're not alone in this, and I would say just continue to talk about it and problem solve and see what he's going to be willing to do in order to do that.
Okay, any suggestions on how to handle a situation when the NT partner dislikes the special interest and is made to feel guilty for not wanting to participate?
Well, it's not great for anyone to be made to feel guilty. So I would suggest, if there's a way to compromise on a special interest, maybe it's not enjoyable for one person the way it currently exists, but try to find a special interest that would be tolerable for both. That's one idea. The other would be to just let each person have their own interests and their own time to pursue their interests and not make it about a conflict in the marriage. Just, set up some parameters so that it's tolerable for both people, and then let both people do what they need to do. Eva, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, also I think it depends on if this is, taking up a lot of the person's time, like an interest that's 3 hours a night or 8 hours a day, or if it's the whole weekend, and then I think you do have to set some boundaries and some rules about, okay, well, if you get that much time with your special interest, then maybe you have this much couple time together, and then maybe you find some angle to incorporate into this interest, or compromise by saying, hey, if I participate with you for an hour per weekend in this interest, then you get to participate in my special interest or activity, and maybe try and reach a compromise that way. And if it is taking up 8 hours or 3 hours, and if we're say talking about video games or something like that, then we're talking about an addiction, and so then that needs to be addressed as well. But I'm assuming that that's not the case here, but it can be sometimes for some people.
Okay, what are the essential tools which can be used by ASNT couples to effectively communicate and reach mutual understanding in disagreements?
Can you say the last part again, Ilya?
Sure. It says, what are the essential tools which can be used by ASNT couples to effectively communicate and reach mutual understanding in disagreements?
So one tool that we talk about in the couples group is it's called a mirroring technique. And basically, the goal is to really slow the communication down and make sure that you are understanding what your partner is saying, that you have a chance to mirror back what you think you've heard, and your partner has a chance to clarify. And then you have the chance to validate and empathize with what your partner is saying before you even respond to it. What happens typically when couples start to argue is one person will start to repeat themselves and get louder and louder and repeat and repeat. And one of the reasons for this is because they don't feel like they've been heard. So if the listener can first indicate to the speaker that they have heard what they're saying, and they do validate that they get why it's important to their partner, and they do empathize with where the partner's coming from, it's not the same as agreeing. But what that does is it makes the partner feel like, the speaker feel like, okay, now they don't have to keep repeating it. They have communicated effectively. They've been heard. They've been understood. Then when their partner responds, then it's their turn to show that they can listen, that they can validate, that they can empathize. So that is one tool that we use. Just really the short version of it, though, is to work out a way with your partner so that you can talk openly about what you're thinking and what you're feeling without feeling like you're going to be judged or criticized or interrupted or shut down in some way.
Yeah, and I would say just being clear, I think asking questions. Sometimes I find in my work with couples that a lot of the crux of the issue with misunderstandings and communication is just over, I think, assumptions, that maybe they are thinking this way, and sort of like a reverse mind reading, I guess, that maybe this is how they were feeling and thinking, and that's why they behaved in this way. So I think bringing curiosity is really important to then facilitate that dialogue, and really listening. And if it feels like it's getting out of hand and you're not being able to listen, then to actually like terminate the conversation and say, oh, we're not getting anywhere, let's just reconvene when we're both feeling a little better, or find some other ways to talk about this. And sometimes when people are having discussions about certain issues, I would recommend, if it's, a really hot pressure topic, you could even bring it to a couples therapist. That could be a safe environment to address some of this, where you have a facilitator and a kind of a referee, so to speak, I guess. And then also, if you're going to do it on your own, to not have it go on and on for too long, because sometimes that can make the person with Asperger sort of shy away from future dialogue and communication, because they'll be like, oh, she wants to talk for 4 hours, and so just keep a timer even, so it's 20 minutes or a half hour if that works. And then I think all of those things, sleep, stress management, exercise, all of that, it's also interconnected and linked, I think, so that the more, alone time a person has, the more rested and rejuvenated the person, the NT partner is feeling, then the more, you're able to actually open yourself up and say, okay, well, what's going on with my partner now? Because you're feeling, rested and well and sort of cared for.
I just want to add that there can be very different conversational styles, and if one person monologues, that could be very hard for the other person to just listen to. I think it's something very short, like 90 seconds is most people's capacity to just listen without interjecting some thought or statement of their own. So it would be important for the couple to work out some sort of verbal or nonverbal cue, whatever would work for them, to have a way of indicating, okay, one person is now being overwhelmed and cannot even process any new information, and that the person who's speaking needs to pause and maybe chunk it down to smaller bits of information. And the other thing I just want to add, because it's very important, is when one person needs to stop a conversation because it is getting heated, or they're getting uncomfortable or anxious, or or upset or angry. When one person says stop, it's important that the other person respect that, because there's no there's no positive outcome from things escalating beyond a certain point, and it's important for a couple to work that out ahead of time, how to indicate that a stop is necessary and what it means. It might mean that the conversation needs to just end until the next day or the next week even. So it would be good to work that out ahead of time and also indicate who reinitiates the topic and how does that get handled. Thanks.
Okay, so I just wanted to
Yeah, and
recap.
I think I just want to add again that, oh, sorry, I just wanted to add to that just a little bit too, that sometimes I think, and and this may not be the specific situation here, the partner with Asperger's, they sometimes don't know what to say. So they might not say anything. And then the NP partner just assumes that they're shutting down and they're just not interested in the conversation. But there is the processing speed to consider. And so sometimes I think, if one does slow down, then maybe they will, be able to come up with what's going on for them, or talk about their experience or day or situation or what have you. And then for some people also memory can be a little bit fuzzy, like we call it working memory. So for some people with Asperger's, they have really good like long-term memories, but sometimes not so good short-term memories. So then couples can get argumentative on points like, oh, well, I remember you said that, and I remember it completely differently. And then I think it's important to realize that, wow, this person perceives reality completely differently. And just because, we perceive reality one way, that doesn't make it reality. So I think for both partners to, again, hold all of this loosely and then ask questions and bring curiosity, I think that's always great.
Okay.
Go
I
ahead,
just
Ellen.
wanted to recap. We have about 10 minutes left, and we do have like 6 or 7 questions, so I'll try to get to as many as I can. But if we don't get to everyone's questions, is there a way they can contact you so that they could follow up?
Yes, you can contact either Grace or myself via email.
Okay. All right, so let's keep going. My next one is my wife is very needy, and that is a stress for me as an AS. We have a family and care about our relationship. We are creatures of habit, and individual change is hard. What can we be done? What can be done?
I guess I would ask if the person who asked the question understands what the needs are. Sometimes someone could seem needy, but really what they want, when you make it concrete and define what it is, it might not be that big a deal. So I'm not sure about the specifics, but I would say, I would ask your partner what exactly they need and how often, and I would, problem solve if it feels like you can give a little bit of what they need. That might go a long way. I would also see if there's someone else who can meet some of the needs. Perhaps your partner's friends or family can step in and help out in some way. So I would get very specific and find out exactly what the expectation is, and then go from there.
Okay. Another question is, I have Asperger's, but my partner does not. However, sometimes I feel like I'm the one with more emotions and am more deeply moved by nature and art. I am often disappointed when my partner cannot connect with me on these things that touch me deeply. Do you have suggestions for how to express myself better so that perhaps he will understand more, or how to cope with the disappointment, adjust expectations, etc.? Is this an Asperger's issue or just a personality issue?
Well, I would say again, every Asperger trait is 180 degrees. We see both ends of it. So some people with Asperger's will describe being very emotional, moved by nature, moved by art, moved by the feelings in a room that they don't even know who they belong to. But they don't seem to have the same boundary of separateness in a way. And so I guess it's just important to know yourself. If you know that it moves you and you are baffled why it doesn't move your partner, I would just say that there is individual difference, there is neurological difference. Try not to judge it or criticize it, but again, try to find some mutual area of interest where you both may be moved. It might be a movie or a book or music or something else, or your partner just may have a different way of thinking that doesn't appear to be the same way, but it doesn't mean it's more shallow or not meaningful. It just might mean taking some time to understand each other. And like Eva said, be curious about each other's thought processes and emotions.
Yeah, I think Michael Wilcox, who co-leads our couples group, he calls it perspective taking. So I think that's, it's like one partner has their perspective, and then the other person has their perspective, and it may be that your partner is moved by other things that may baffle you. You might be like, wow, why are you, moved by that? So I think also maybe bring curiosity again and say, well, I'm moved by this, and what are you moved by? And maybe come to appreciate, each other's uh, vulnerabilities and strengths and different abilities. Yeah.
Yeah, some people find mathematics beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there is individual difference, and just try to be curious about each other's.
I do have a follow-up question from the earlier person that needed to think a minute. And so here we go. My NT partner,
Great.
my NT partner and I, AS, have busy lives. It's hard to manage both alone time and make sure she feels emotionally satisfied like I want her to. Are there particular strategies we could employ?
I would say don't make assumptions, but ask specifically what your partner is looking for from you. Because since you are so busy, you don't want to go down the wrong track, and you don't want to guess and then feel like you're trying very hard, but it's not appreciated. So to be more effective and efficient, I would say just make sure you know what it is exactly that your partner is looking for from you, and then see if there's a way to squeeze that into your busy life. Also, see if there's something that you need from your partner that might make you feel better too. It shouldn't just be one direction.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, just more concrete and specific. So say you may assume, I'm not saying that you do, but say for example, that, she wants to spend the rest of the evening, like 5 hours or whatever, just glued to you or something like that. But it may be just, it's, a half hour before bed, or it's an hour, or it's just a 20-minute conversation. So I think just again what Grace said about just being very specific about what those needs are. I think.
And good job on coming up with the question.
We have a couple more. The discussion of sleep was discussed. What if my spouse goes to sleep for the night very early after work and dinner? This leaves no time for us together. What do you suggest?
I would suggest understanding, first of all, that your partner might be overwhelmed from the day and need to really just collapse into sleep. But that is not a reason not to have time together. So if you can negotiate some weekend time during the day when the energy is still quite high, then that would be much better. But try to both understand each other's needs for together time and for sleep, and try to figure out, looking at the week, not every day at a time, but maybe look at the week as a whole, when you could figure out how to meet both of the needs that are in the relationship.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. My AS partner comes off as selfish. For example, me and the kids are watching a movie and he wants to join us but doesn't want to watch the movie we want, so he expects us to all watch the movie he wants to instead. How can I show him that we would love to have him join us, but it's not fair for all of us to do what he wants to do?
So this touches on the rigidity that we spoke of earlier, that sometimes people with Asperger's have definite thoughts in their mind and that they can't easily transition to a change of plans, or they can't tolerate as well something that isn't of interest to them. So I would say ahead of time, discuss it with your family, which movie you can all agree on, and if it's a night where you want to spend time together, then see if there's something that that you all can do. If there isn't, if the kids, for example, the kids might want to watch a kids movie that you have no interest in, it's also okay to just sit in a room with your family and not really be fully engaged in the movie. You could be, thinking about things in your own head, but you're still present on some level for your kids, and that might be another compromise. You could even maybe talk to your wife whether you could be in the same room and have your laptop. Sometimes that works for families, sometimes it doesn't. Or maybe you could pick the movie one night and the other people in the family, maybe each person in the family gets to pick a movie. So there are different ways to work it through, and if you could try to bring some lightness and fun and humor to problem solving, then that might go a long way.
Great. Okay. Well, I think anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I think we've touched on all we can fit in the time that we have. But again, if there are questions that we didn't address or others come up, after this session, it is late, feel free to contact either Eva or Grace or myself, and I can forward it on to the right person. But I thank you very much. Thank you, ladies, for giving a wonderful presentation. And thank you all for being with us here this evening. And just as a follow-up, I will be sending out an evaluation, so that helps us to provide the programs that you want to hear, and also improve the ones that we have currently running. So I encourage you to please fill out that evaluation. And I guess, ladies, if you're all set, we can sign off.
Okay, good night, and thank you all for your questions.
Thank you so much.
Bye.